I'd have known this morning when I laced up my boots, I'd be walking streets of gold. I would have shaved my face, maybe changed my shirt for this meeting with the Lord. If I'd have known this morning today would be my last, I'd have written you a letter, honey, I can't make it back. When you cry, my sweet angel, when you cry, remember how love has no goodbye. My time came early, the orders couldn't wait, and I've been posted here at heaven's gate. If I'd have known this morning that I'd soon be laid to rest, I'd have stayed up all night long, picking my old guitar, hanging with my buddies, making memories for them to take home. But I didn't know this morning when we got the car, I'd be the first to fall. When you cry, my sweet angel, when you cry, remember how love has no goodbye. My time came early, the orders couldn't wait, and I've been posted here at heaven's gate. It's gonna hurt for a while, but one day you'll think of me and smile. Yeah, you'll smile. When you cry, my sweet angel, when you cry, remember how love has no goodbye. My time came early, the orders couldn't wait, and I've been posted here at heaven's gate, where I'll be watching over you night and day, hearing every word you pray. When you cry,
well, it's not often that I get to speak to rock stars, but I've got one with me today. Garry Hannan, who I was introduced to by Clive Midlane. Gary's outside Nashville, and he's written some incredible music, but he's one of ours. And Garry, welcome. Welcome. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you inviting me on your show.
Garry, just tell us a little bit about your early life and how you ended up in the Grey Scouts.
Yeah, for me, my folks are originally from South Africa, Hannes. Mom was from Pinetown, Dad was a Benoni boy. And he was a expatriate working in Zambia, northern Rhodesia at the time, and that's where I was born. so after about 4 years, 5 years, they sent me to Eagle School in November. And as you know, that became Elam Mission. And I did 3 years there, and then I went to, they moved to the Lofau, to Triangle. And so then they moved me to school in Triangle, and I completed my junior school there. And then I went to Guinea Fowl for 2 terms, and then to Fort Vic. That was about the time they were starting the petrol rationing. And there was a long commute for them to get to Guelo and back. But anyway, so yeah, finished high school in 79 at Fort Vic, and I was in the very last intake. And so I remember showing up on the 4th of March, 1980, reported to Cranbourne Barracks. And that was the day that Mugabe was, that they won the election. And it was kind of an interesting time because at Cranbourne there was a bustle of activity going on. You could tell something was happening. The guys were all on standby. It was a very tense time. But anyway, so all of us rookies, we went to the auditorium there, and we did our medical test, and swore an allegiance to Rhodesia. I was kind of amazed at that because it always stuck in my head, even though we had Zimbabwe, Rhodesia. When I swore my oath, it was to Rhodesia. And then they shipped me and some other guys out the very next day by train to Llewellyn Barracks in Bullies, and that's where I got my kit. I was there for about 2 days at Llewellyn, and then some representatives from the different units showed up to recruit. And the guys from Squadron and Scouts were not there. They were no longer recruiting because it was at the very end. RLI was taking guys, Grey Scouts was taking guys. And the representative from Grey Scouts who came to that unit was Van Heerden, Sergeant Major Van Heerden, and his son and I were at Eagle School together. And I recognized him from, parents' visits and stuff. So I thought to myself, man, I had some buddies who had been in Grey Scouts, Mark Harris being one of them. And I thought, well, I really, really, had the 2 options. I'd like to go to Grey Scouts. And so they put us, the guys that wanted to go to Grey Scouts, they put us in a horse box. Those old trucks that carry the horses. They put us in the back of one of those, and they took us all the way to Nkomo. So it was at the very, very actually past the end of the war, if you think about it. And so guys like myself, we really did nothing, Hannes, to contribute, but we still had the pride of being a member of the unit. And being a member of what we consider the Rhodesian Army at the time, So anyway, so that's where I met Mitty and Gordon Forrest and a bunch of other reprobates that I'm in touch with today. Good guys. And then from there, when I got out of Grey Scouts, my dad wanted me to start an electrical apprenticeship at Kariba, and I did about a month. And South African diving services were working on the dam wall at the time, and I befriended their supervisor, a guy called Eddie Kennedy, and he said to me, man, why don't you come to South Africa and I'll get you a job with SADS, And so I did. I left and I went and I worked for South African Diving Services in Durban, and I worked with them, did an apprenticeship with them. Qualified as a diver, and then I went to the West Coast and worked for a contractor for De Beers Diamonds, one of the concession holders there, and did some diamond diving. Did that for a few months, and then I went back to Durban and was the bouncer at London Town Pub and Father's Moustache. That was my paying gig. And while I was there, I got to meet a lot of guys from Reconnaissance that were based on the Bluff, and some of the guys from Squadron, that would come in and drink at Father's Moustache. And I got a good group of friends, so I decided to sign up with Reconnaissance. So I did that, and I was there for a year. And I want to make a point here, Hannes. You know, people say, "Oh, were you a recce?" and all that. Recce is terminology that's reserved for operators that are qualified, and I was not one of those guys. So even though I was a member of Reconnaissance, I was never a qualified operator there. I was there for a year, and then some buddies of mine in the North Sea communicated with me about how much money they were making. So I went over to the North Sea as a deep sea diver, and I worked on the oil rigs there for a couple of years, and then from there traveled. And through it all, I had my guitar, Hannes. I was writing songs along the way, even from the Grey Scouts days to the North Sea oil rig days. When I wasn't working offshore on an oil rig, I'd go and be a busker in the underground tube station in London, in Bond Street. And I'd make a few pennies there, and then I'd go up to the Walkabout Club upstairs and drink a few beers, and then go back down with the guitar and play a few more songs, in the tube station. And I was writing songs through it all, But anyway, so after being in New Zealand and visiting Australia for a while, I came back to the States to do some underwater work in the Northeast, the Boston area, and then started working in the Gulf of Mexico. And through it all, I had my guitar. Never wanted to be a singer. I just loved writing songs. And I think, I don't know how many years ago it was, probably 15 years ago now, I was on a golf course in Florida, and there were a couple of guys up ahead of me, and I hit a ball right between them. They weren't inviting me to walk through, like they didn't have the courtesy. So I hit a ball right between them, and they turned around and they said, "Do you want to join us, or do you want to go on by yourself?" And I said, "Oh, I'd like to join you guys." And they ended up being record executives from Nashville. And they asked me what I did. And I said, "Well, I'm a deep sea diver, and I have a little catering company on the side. I pretty much was doing whatever I could to make a living." And they invited me up to Nashville to play them the songs I'd written. And I sat down with one of them, and he listened, and he said, "No, these songs are really, really awful. They're bad. You're not going to be a professional like this." So I said, "Okay, I'll be back in a month." And I went back and wrote some more songs. And I went back a month later, and this executive, he listened again, and he said, "I think I can get you a publishing deal as a professional, but let me see what I can do." About a week later, I had an interview with a publisher, and she said, "Okay, I'll give you a chance." I was already 40 years old at this time. And she said, "I'll give you a chance." And one of the very first songs I turned in was a song called "Tequila Makes the Clothes Fall Off," and it went number one 15 years ago today. Oh, not today, but this year. And, since then it opened up a lot of doors, and then I started, just writing professionally. And then soon afterwards, I had another number one, a song called "Back When I Knew It All" with a country band called Montgomery Gentry. And then I started working with some of the pop guys. I was writing with the guys from Bread. Remember Bread? Maybe the band Bread. Yeah. And then I started getting a lot of songs recorded by a lot of people. And then Nickelback was performing my songs. And then Blake Shelton, and just a bunch of the heavy hitters here. So I was very fortunate and blessed. And then amongst all of this activity of writing professionally, I always had an affinity for the guys who we lost in Rhodesia, and such a huge pride in our army guys. And I wanted to write songs about that so that the world could listen, because the one thing about warfare is there's a common denominator, and that's, sadness and grief and nostalgia. And that's why even us old guys, we still look back 40, 50 years ago with the immense pride, and there's a camaraderie there that'll never go away, And I wanted to write about that, and I wanted to articulate myself in a simplistic yet profound manner, so that, people they got the point of the song without filling the song full of words. And I thought the only way I could accomplish that, Hannes, was to travel to different battlefields and write songs on the actual battlefields. So I went and got on a motorcycle and strapped my guitar on the back and went around all the Civil War battlefields here in the States, and then up through, took a ride through Canada to get to the Northeast. And you know, I visited a lot of the monuments and that to World War I and World War II guys over here. And then I went over to Normandy, and I was on Omaha Beach and a lot of those areas where the invasion of Normandy occurred, and wrote some songs over there on the beach. And then I went to Africa, and I had some mates, who had been killed. John Roby was a good friend of mine. I went to the location where John had been killed, and then Mark Harris and, a few of the other guys. I didn't have my guitar with me at that point on that motorcycle ride because a friend of mine had lent me the motorcycle, and I just didn't have the right gear. But I just sat there and I collected my thoughts, and I took photographs and I shot video. And then when I came back home, I started to write, Songs from the Battlefield Part 2, which I kind of shelved when the coronavirus thing came out and my travel was more difficult. And that's a project that's still yet to be completed, So, the first song, that Tequila Makes a Clothes Fall Off song, that came from an expression, Hannes, that I'd heard in a bar when I was in the army, and some guy was at the bar, and all I overheard in the distance on my periphery was, I can't drink that stuff, it makes my pants fall off. And I always thought that was funny. And for 20 something years, I'd go to a bar and I'd say, hey, give me a shot of tequila, it makes my pants fall off, and then a buddy of mine who's a really good songwriter, great songwriter, writes for Don Henley and all these guys. I said it to him one day in a bar, and he said, well, we should change pants to clothes. And I thought to myself, yeah, that's a really good idea. So he wrote it down on a bar coaster, Tequila Makes Her Clothes Fall Off. And then the next day we wrote that song, and when it went number one, it's been played, 4 or 5 million times now in the States.
Who did you sing it?
No. I'm still not a guy who loves to sing, Hannes. I'm still a guy who loves to write. A guy called Joe Nichols was the first one to sing it. And then there's been many, many other artists that have re-recorded that song.
And Garry, Heaven's Gate, which is the one I cottoned on to. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was going down, I think it was I-10, Highway I-10. I was on my motorcycle, and the melody started coming to me for this song. And I didn't have the words Heaven's Gate in there. I had this, it was about a woman at the time. The song was Angelina. Don't cry for me, Angelina, don't you cry. And but you can always tell when a song is not sitting right in your gut, So I continued to work on a song about a woman who'd lost her husband in combat. And then I thought to myself, well, it might be better if I could make it the actual person who's gone talking subliminally to their spouse either through her dreams or through her prayers.
Right.
And saying, I'm okay, and reassuring her. And so I stopped at the house of John Wiggins, the guy that I was writing a lot of songs with, who I'd written Tequila with, and played him what I had, and he loved that melody. It's like an Irish melody, and together we wrote that song, And then I just did a little homemade video, on the song.
And who sang that?
I did. That's me singing.
Well, I don't know, but they say you can't sing. I say you can, Garry. I thought it was incredible. I can't listen to that song without bursting into tears. It's just incredibly moving. Just tell us about, because I know some of the chaps who come up in the video, but maybe just talk a little bit about some of the guys that you wanted to remember. In the course of
Wayne Ross Smith was a roadie. You remember Wayne Ross Smith? Yes. He was a squadron boy, and we served it on the bluff together. Ron Cook was an English guy who came over and was with SAS. And Ron was like a very, very close mate of mine in reconnaissance. And then, Pittaway was there. He was a guinea fowl boy. And then Cripps was in there. Just guys that I'd met. Some of the guys I'd met, some of the guys I'd never met, while I was in Rhodesia, either as a civilian or as a guy in South Africa or as, on a social basis in Rhodesia. So
I saw Garry Lloyd in there. I was at school with Garry.
Oh.
I think he was, he was with Forera when he was killed. But gee, what an incredibly moving song, and what a story, and what a fantastic tribute.
Yeah. Hannes, I feel like songwriting is the only way that I can really make a contribution to the Rhodesians. I was too young to have been there with you guys in a major capacity, but I want all the Rhodesian veterans that watch this to know that one of the true biggest blessings for a guy like at my age, I'm 59 now, is that I feel like I had a lot of heroes growing up because we idolized our troopers and our soldiers, us younger guys. I mean, there was such a huge inspiration, and it wasn't just being grateful for what they were doing. It was more of a fact that these guys were giants to us, and I want them to know that they did have an impact. And I've made a career out of the stuff that I learned from them, as a songwriter.
Well, Garry, I think we're all on the same wavelength. One of the reasons I wanted to write, and one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing here with you today, is because I think we owe it to history and to the chaps who did lay down their lives, and across the racial and gender barriers. There were a lot of people out there, a lot of brave people who deserve to be remembered. And in our small way, I like to think we're making a little bit of a contribution to that history. So, a lot easier listening to music than reading books, but I take my hat off to you.
You too, Hannes. And, another thing that's very interesting is if you go online and you read the comments from younger people here in America, they also, a lot of them have a huge amount of respect for Rhodesian soldiers. They've just got that reputation,
Garry, what I'm picking up, which never occurred to me at the time, and it wouldn't have occurred to you either. But it's just the passage of time. At that time, none of us really thought we were doing anything wildly unusual. We were doing what everybody else around us was doing, and it was all pretty much normal. But 40 years on, people today now look back and think that that it was exceptional, and in a way, I suppose it was. What really interests a lot of military people today is how little we actually had to work with compared to the modern day soldier and airman. Actually, I was talking to Tol Janneke yesterday, I think it was, again, and just what the Air Force managed to do with old equipment and very limited resources, and yet very, very effective.
Yeah, Hannes, my mother, she was in police reserves, and my dad was in Part 2. But my mother worked at Jock Buffalo Range. She worked under Sunray there, a guy called Felix Kuttner. Yeah. And I would go out there, and obviously I wasn't allowed near the HQ, but I'd go and kill some time out there. And the Fire Force was deployed right there, and sometimes it was RAR and sometimes it was RLI. And they had a volleyball court set up right in front of the HQ there. And there were, I can't tell you how many times, like the RLI guys, I'd be a lighty, man, and they'd say, come on, come and play, come and join us. And they made you feel like you were part of the family even before you were a soldier, and almost like they invested in you, And I'll tell you something else that stuck in my mind. When SB was processing the the bodies of the guys who'd been killed, the communists. There was a processing facility behind Jock Buffalo Range. As you drive in on the right-hand side, there was just a place out there where they had burlap sack fencing around it. And I remember my dad taking me there as a young guy, kid, and he would say, "Come, son, come. I want to show you something." And then he would show me these bodies, you know. And in any other country, they would think that's abnormal. And my dad would say, "Son, this is the reality of war right here. It's not a game. It's not something about, you know, it's not something you see on TV. This is the reality, and you better be prepared when it's your turn, because this is a very serious thing." And it always stuck in my head. And when I'd come home on school holidays, my dad would get his FN out, and he'd teach me how to strip and assemble the FN, and then he'd put me against a stopwatch, try and get it as fast as I could, and then he'd blindfold me, and it just became a game. As father and son, we'd do this every evening when he got home from work. And then, of course, when I went to Great Scouts, I was given a G3, so it didn't really help me anyway. I thought, man, I'm going to beat the instructor. I'm so proficient at this, you know. But I tell you what, those memories of the guys that, like Midi and just champions, man. We had the best, and we had our own sense of humor, and we had our own language almost, you know. And yet when you watch the soldiers write books or write songs, and you just listen to how well they are, like, you know, like you, Hannes, I mean, you're writing these books and that, but I mean, you were a soldier, you know, and you'd think that most of the Rhodesian guys were academics, but when you read their work, you know, just because linguistically they're so proficient, you know. So yeah, very proud of Rhodesians.
One thing I'll say to people about we certainly had our problems, but one of the benefits of having grown up where we did was, if you're like me and you want to write, there's absolutely no shortage of stuff to write about. It was an incredibly action-packed history in more ways than one. If you look at the history of the country, there was never a dull moment, and so many interesting people and events. So for an amateur historian like myself, it's very fertile ground.
Yeah. You know, I'm good mates with Tim Bax. He's over here too, you know, and I'll go and stay at his place occasionally. And well, that was before he got married. But you know, Tim's got those wonderful books out that he wrote, you know. Yes. It's just so astute, you know. And I love the fact that even today, the older soldiers still invest their time with us young guys. You know, when I did my motorcycle trip through Zim a few years ago, 3 years ago, I think, I went and stayed with Norman Millett, you know, Normie, right?
Yes.
And we went into Gonorrhoea together, and it was just like, you know, 40 years ago when we knew each other. You know, there's just, it's like you don't see some guys for 30 or 40 years, and then you just pick straight up as if it was yesterday that you were with each other. And we, you know, Rhodesians share that bond, you know. So
yes, there is a very real bond. Garry, I'm just sorry that the closest to a poet that came out of the Grey Scouts was probably Bones Ford.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I've still got a few of his poems, actually. He was absolutely brilliant. He had so many great ideas. I'm sorry he's not around to help us color in the history.
Well, you know, him and Midi were like best mates, you know.
Yeah.
And so when Midi would sneak me out to Squires to go and get a dope when I was still a recruit, I'd jump in the back of his car when no one was looking, and him and Bones, and then we'd go off to the pub, you know. And I just got a FaceTime call from Jamie White, who was in Grays with me, and Jumbo Davidson. Yeah. And Jumbo was the bouncer at the door there, and me and Bones and Midi and a couple of other guys would show up there. And of course, we didn't have ties all the time, and you needed a tie to get in. And Jumbo would be, you know, he'd always have like 5 or 6 ties. And once he'd given them out to his mates, whoever came next, I mean, you know, you might not be allowed into the bar. And so one day, me and Bones and Midi were there, and Jumbo said, "I tell you what, guys, can you take off your bootlaces, take off your shoelaces, and we'll make a tie out of that. So that's what I did. I took my shoelace out, and he said, okay, now you look fine. Off you go, you know. But it's that kind of sense of humor that we all shared. And, you know, when you were with Bones, he just had you laughing the whole time. I mean, you just, and, you know, another thing about him, Hannes, is he was a good singer. There's some footage, some video footage of him singing. And, yeah, he could play guitar.
Such a talented guy. Bones, he definitely left too early.
Oh yeah, it's tragic. It's a terrible blow, and I know a lot of guys felt it, but I know that Mitty must have been crushed by it, you know, because that was his stone china, you know.
Garry, been great talking to you, man.
Yeah, you too, Hannes. Yeah, and
we'll stay in touch. And how do we get hold of your music?
You know what, Hannes? If anybody wants to, if anyone's a Rhodesian veteran and they just want one of those CDs, I'll just give it to them for free if they just pay the postage. On my website, GarryHannan.com.
Okay.
Or else they can go to Facebook, Garry Hannan on Facebook, and just send me a private message with their address.
Okay.
And I'll. As long as the stocks last, I don't know how long stocks will last, but if they just reach out to me with an address, I'll just go ahead and compliment them.
But Garry, can we not download it? Is it online?
No, I don't use those platforms because,
okay.
I'm not is really a singer, Hannes. It's trying to sell CDs.
Yes.
I make my money as a live performer. So I go out into theaters and tell stories and then, you know, do the songs that I've written. So because this was such a personal project, I'm happy to share it, but I didn't want to elevate it onto a platform where you go and buy it, you know?
Okay.
So I think one of my managers a while back did that. And quite honestly, I haven't been keeping up with that. So if it is on a platform, I'm unaware of it. But like I say, I'll give it away for free if they'll just pay the postage.
Yeah, okay, great. Garry, I can only wish you all the best in your future endeavors and look forward to coming to one of your shows one of these days.
Yeah, actually, I may come to South Africa. There's some talk going on right now. And I think Cape Town may be included. It still depends on the COVID situation.
Garry, if you do that, let's get our heads together and get some people out there to support you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Or maybe I can do a fundraiser for you guys or something for our vets, you know. Maybe let's talk about that, Hannes.
Yeah, but we'll talk about that. Garry, thanks. Okay. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, Hannes. Cheers.
You will. I love this song. If I'd have known this morning when I laced up my boots, I'd be walking streets of gold. Would have shaved my face and maybe changed my shirt for this meeting with the Lord. If I'd have known this morning today would be my last, I'd have written you a letter, honey, I can't make it back. When you cry, my sweet angel, when you cry, remember how love has no goodbye. My time came early, the orders couldn't wait, and I've been posted here at heaven's gate. If I'd have known this morning that I'd soon be laid to rest, I'd have stayed up all night long, picking my old guitar, hanging with my buddies, making memories for them to take home. But I didn't know this morning when we got the call, I'd be the first to fall. When you cry, my sweet angel, when you cry, remember Remember how love has no goodbye. My time came early, the orders couldn't wait, and I've been posted here at Heaven's Gate. I know it's gonna hurt for a while, but one day you'll think of me and smile. When you cry, my sweet angel, when you cry, remember how love has no goodbye. My time came early, the orders couldn't wait, and I've been posted here at Heaven's Gate, where I'll be watching over you